Hi guys and gals, today we're gonna talk about the preacher curl bench. We're gonna do easy bar variation, we're gonna do the normal bar, we're also gonna do the dumbbell variation and the cable variation. First I'm gonna do these two and then I'm gonna do the cable and dumbbell. The first two exercises are not gonna be good. I'm gonna go through the details why they're not good. I've already talked about them in the past as well. But again, we're gonna go through them, and the second two exercises are gonna be the variations that I prefer you to do and the variations that I do myself as well. Before everything, I already have videos about bicep training and arm training in general. I'll go through a lot of details. If you want to learn more about the anatomy and physiology and the technical details, I'm gonna put a link up in this video, so if you're watching from my YouTube channel, you can just click on the link and learn more. We're not gonna cover everything that we have talked about in the past, so if you want to learn more, just watch those videos and yep, that's it. So without further ado, the easy bar variation and the barbell variation. As I have talked about the arm in the past, the elbow is a hinge joint, meaning that it just can go in one direction. Although you can rotate the lower part of your arm, but the elbow itself is just moving in one direction. So you've got to consider that when you're using a barbell, especially if you're using if you're doing the any bicep exercise or tricep exercise and any front raise exercises or things like that, you really need to consider that fact. So when you're using an easy bar, which you're gonna grab it like this, although the way up is good, but as you're coming down, because of the positioning of the hand, which is a little bit to neutral. So if this is supinated, this is neutral, this is pronated. When you are a little bit from supinated to neutral, so like this, the elbow is moving out as well. It's not just the wrist that's moving. When the hand moves, the elbow tends to move in the direction as well. So for example, when I'm pronated, the elbow is comfortable here. When I supinate, the elbow comes in. So when you're using this, the elbow tends to go a little bit out. And as mentioned, it just moves in one direction. And when you're doing the exercise like this, you're not just moving in one direction. It's not just up and down. You're also forcing your lower arm to go to this direction and kind of forcing yourself to rotate the elbow as well, which is not possible. So what tends to happen is majority of people do this. So when they go down, they either bend the wrist too much to compensate for this fact, or they just put their elbow in an uncomfortable position and they just use a lot of the brachialis and brachioradialis to just bring it up, but it doesn't matter, you're really destroying the joint. So there is no point in using an easy bar, and because of that, we put it aside. Now let's talk about the straight bar. Now for this, you're fully supinated. That's a fact, so you don't have this problem that your elbow goes out. But as you can see, when you're doing this exercise, although the elbow is in good position, but first of all, it's not perfect, I still am a little bit uncomfortable because for me to be able to use my elbow in the best shape, I need to have a good flexibility and a good range of motion while doing this exercise. And 90% of people do not have that flexibility to bring the elbows too much close to each other and do the exercise. And again, I see many times the elbows go out, and that is also related to the wrist positioning. majority of people do not have that flexibility to fully supinate. So because of that, they are still a little bit pronated or a little bit to neutral. So because of that, again, the same problem. And aside from that, whether you're using this or the easy bar, you cannot be 100% sure that you're doing the exercise symmetrically, because you can be stronger on one side and just use the momentum on the other side, and that's not good if you want to create a symmetric look. So again, for that fact, we're gonna put this aside as well. Although training both sides of the body at the same time, or bilateral training, is good when it comes to the time you spend at the gym, but it's better to create that symmetric look and let it take a little bit longer. And it's actually not that much of a difference, because the rest that you need is going to be also more when you're training both sides of your body, and also you're not going to be able to perform that good because you're going to get fatigued sooner, especially if you're beginner and if your cardiovascular health is not that good. You need to pump a lot of blood to both sides of your body. Now, the bicep is not that big, the arm is not that big, but still you're gonna get fatigued if you use both sides at the same time. And also, again, the symmetric fact that we talked about. Now, aside from all of those things, you don't have the freedom of range of motion or freedom of variations actually when you're using the easy bar or the barbell, because you've got to do the variation that you can do. So you've got to consider your flexibility when you're using the bar, so whether easy bar or the normal bar. But when you're using a dumbbell or a cable or a resistance band, you have a lot more freedom, because you're just targeting one arm at a time and you can manipulate the way you do the exercise. So first of all, when you're using a dumbbell, you're just gonna be focused on one side, so you can rotate, you can go back, and you're gonna train based on your flexibility. So if something is not feeling good in the elbow, you're gonna notice that and you're gonna change it based on your flexibility. If your wrist is not comfortable, you can just rotate it, you have that freedom. And although if there are some limitations to the way you position the hand, because again, as mentioned, too much pronation or bringing in neutral is gonna impact the elbow. But because you have the freedom to move your body, which we're gonna talk about, you can have a safe elbow positioning and also play with the wrist. And also that fact is gonna target different muscles as well. So without further ado, first I'm gonna talk about the dumbbell, then we're gonna go to the cable. But a lot of the things that I'm gonna mention with the dumbbell is gonna be the same with the cable. I thought there are just a small details that differ. Also, what I'm gonna say about the resistance band is gonna be the same with the cable as well. So the cable and resistance band are the same. The only difference is that the resistance on the resistance band changes or gets more when you stretch it more. But the cable is gonna be constant. So this is gonna get tougher when I go up. So the more contraction I have, the tougher it's gonna get. But if this was a cable, it would be the same tension. Although I might feel a little bit harder some part of the exercise, but that's because of my anatomical build-up. It's for my anatomical capabilities. It's not because of the resistance of the machine or the cable itself. Okay, so the dumbbell. When you're supinated and you do the exercise, you've got a few options. First of all, you can, if you have the flexibility, you can bring the chest here and do the exercise as long as the elbow is comfortable and is straight down. So not this, the elbow is straight down and you don't feel any tension in the shoulder. You can do that. The more you go out and do the exercise, which I've already talked about, but when it comes to the preacher curl, the more you do the exercise like this, you're gonna target the more you're gonna target the short head of the bicep. But majority of people, because of flexibility reasons, are gonna be somewhere in between. So the chest or the sternum is gonna be pointed 45 degrees, so you're gonna target equally. So make sure you do this exercise based on your flexibility. Again, do not force it. If it's not comfortable on the elbow or the wrist, do not do it. So keep that in mind. But anyway, we talked about that fact. Another thing that you can manipulate is the positioning of the torso. So you can keep the torso back and do the exercise, or you can lean and do the exercise. The more you lean, it's gonna be more contraction. So when I lean, it's gonna be a better contraction and less stretch. The more I go back and do the exercise, the contraction is gonna be less and the stretch is gonna be more. The reason is because I have more shoulder flexion. So the more shoulder flexion you have and do the exercise, you're gonna target the bicep a lot more. Just make sure when you're doing this exercise, you do not push the elbow back. So do not push the elbow back. When you do that, you're gonna just use a lot of lats and the muscles on the back to bring the arm to yourself closer and do the exercise. So it's not gonna be that much bicep. So make sure, aside from the part that you go down, when you're coming up, try to elevate the elbow as well. You're gonna use the shoulder, but that's alright because the front delt or the front side of the shoulder works with the bicep in flexion of the shoulder, and that's normal. So the bicep doesn't just do elbow flexion, it also does shoulder flexion and also supination as well, which we're gonna talk about, but it's alright. It's better to use the shoulder and do the exercise and use the bicep better, or the brachialis, brachioradialis, or generally the muscles in the arm better compared to using a lot of muscles in the back to help you up. So make sure you bring it up as well. Now let's talk about the wrist. Now we talked about the shoulder positioning, we talked about the elbow positioning. Make sure you don't have any flexion, any extension, any abduction or adduction in your wrist. Keep it straight. You can supinate or keep it neutral. So again, you can do the exercise like this or like this, but you should do it based on the flexibility of your body, more specifically the elbow positioning that we talked about. And because you're using the dumbbell, you have the freedom to play with it. So for you to keep the elbow in the good form, the supination requires you to either point yourself a little bit out, or if you're in, you should bring the elbow in and not do the exercise like this. So the elbow should be a little bit in. So what happens if you want to do the pronated variation? So as you can see, when I go down, it gets a little bit uncomfortable in my elbow. The reason is because, again, pronation brings the elbow a little bit up. If you want to go around this problem and do the pronated variation as well, all you need to do is point the chest more up. As you can see, the elbow is a lot more comfortable. Let's talk about the mistakes that normal people make while doing this exercise. The first one is people drop the weight down too fast, so the upper arm is fixed, the lower arm is not. And when you do that, you're just gonna cause a lot of problem in your elbow, so make sure you control it. You also do not need to go all the way down to straight. So make sure around 170 degrees is gonna be alright. So if this is 180, Around here is alright. You don't need to go all the way, especially if you go a little bit heavy. If the weight is not heavy, it's alright. You can go to all the way straight, but if it's a little bit heavy, for safety reasons, do not go all the way, and make sure you do not go fast as well. So, another mistake that I see people make is they come all the way up. I've talked about it many times. You've got to consider the gravity when it comes to dumbbells. When you're doing, for example, let's say a shoulder raise, when I have the dumbbell in my hand, from here to here, the resistance is not that much, and from here it's going to get tougher, and here around parallel to the ground is going to be the hardest. It's not good to go all the way up for a shoulder raise, but just for educational purposes, the higher I go as well, it's going to get easier, and here again it's going to be easy, because the hardest part is when I'm parallel to the ground. So this is the hardest part, or 90 degrees compared to my torso. The more I come down or I go up from 90 degrees, it's going to be less resistant. And it's going to be the same in here as well. When I'm doing the bicep, when I come all the way here, there is no resistance. Here is just I'm playing with the dumbbell in my hand, it's not that much resistance. And from here, the more I go down, it's going to get tougher. And again, here or parallel to the ground is going to be the hardest. And again, as I go down, it's going to get easier. And as you have already tried it many times, the bicep curl, when you're standing up and doing it, is not hard here. It's hard mostly here. And also when you go all the way up, it's not hard here as well. The degree of shoulder friction is best to be under 160. So the 20 degrees at the end are not supposed to happen. And when you're especially doing the bicep curl, when you're going up, it's gonna get flexed more, and that can cause problems in here, like impingement. So keep it a little bit lower, but you can play with that. If you really want to get a good contraction, you need to come and do the cable or the resistance band. So this time I'm not having a good stretch. So here to here I do not feel anything, but as I come up, it's gonna get tougher the more I contract. So it's gonna give me a great contraction, but again, I'm not pushing the elbow back, I'm bringing the elbow up to get a good contraction. This is gonna be a lot safer because you don't have that much stretch and the elbow is a lot freer. So because you come up, it's not gonna be anything dangerous. So although you're not getting a good stretch, but this is really gonna help you to have a good contraction. Also, if you want to have better contraction while you're angling your torso, you can again bend from the side. So just make sure the elbow is not to the bench, it comes up as you're coming up, but make sure you do not overdo it as well. So do not go past around 70 or 80 degrees. So when you're all the way out and you're doing the exercise, it's just gonna be a lot of pressure on your shoulder, and it can cause a lot of problems like impingement and bursitis and things like that as well.